Welcome to Growing Up Boomer. I'm your host, Padre, and this podcast is dedicated to the life and times of the baby boomer generation. The show is loosely scripted, and sometimes we'll go down rabbit holes, and where it leads us to, one will never know. This podcast can be informative, funny, and sometimes irreverent, but most of all, we hope you find it entertaining. This is your host, Padre, with another special edition of Growing Up Boomer. As you know, last week we had Jeff Nelligan as a co-host in Growing Up Boomer, and we covered his book, 4 Lessons from My 3 Sons. But this week, we're going to go over his other 2 books, Tales from the Swamp, 5 Habits of Successful Politicians, Notes of a Fixer, and Be the Ball, a deep dive into the classic movie Caddyshack. And so without further ado, let's welcome back Jeff. Jeff, we'd like to thank you for coming back to Growing Up Boomer.
I appreciate it, Padre.
Now, as our audience knows, we covered your first book, 4 Lessons from My 3 Sons, last week. For me, I found the book insightful, meaningful, and recommended to anyone who has small children or is planning to have a family, and you're looking to raise resilient kids. That book was outstanding.
Oh, thank you, Padre.
If you don't mind, I'd like to go over a couple of your other, but just real quick over your other books as well. Okay.
Talk about Tales from the Swamp?
Oh, you know what? I'm going to tell you this right now. When I read that book, this is the best business book I have ever read. I've read a lot of business books. I've been in the retail industry since 69. I've worked retail since 69 finally, and I could have gone another 10 years because I told my wife I had still 10 years left in me, right? And she says, "No, I want those 10 years." So I retired. I retired about the end of 2020. So I was in retail for I didn't plan to go to retail. Retail's like Denny's. You never plan to go to Denny's, but you just end up there, you know. And I say that to everybody who's in retail, anybody who's in management, because I'll say, and they'll, "No, it isn't." I said, "What did you go to college for?" And he goes, chemistry. So you wanted to be a chemist. He says, "Now you're a VP, of a retail unit." And he says, "Yeah, I guess you're right. I wanted to be an electronic engineer. And here I was. I'm a store designer now." So it's one of those situations that you end up. But this book of yours, Tales from the Swamp, is the best business book I have ever read on how to run a business. I've been going like, man, I said, I should have had this one at the beginning of when I started going into the business.
Politics is a lot like business.
It is.
You're trying to maneuver around some big egos and at the same time, move things forward, if it's finance or legislation. And you're dealing with all sorts of different people in a very controlled environment. So maybe that's the similarity between the two.
Well, what I like about it, and when I was reading, I'm kind of reading between the lines, everything in politics is like business. Everything is about marketing.
Yeah.
You have to be able to sell your product.
Right.
And you know what? You have to, and I love the fact that you start with the end game. In other words, you're right. You start with the end game. I said, that's exactly how I used to do things. In other words, first of all, I am going to bring in this product. This is the goal for this product. And then you work backwards. Number 1, you start with the end game. But then you come up with a game plan. And in that game plan, you have 5 habits. The first is you come up with a financial plan. Number 1. Once you've done that, then you come up with a marketing plan. Once that's done, then you come up with a execution plan. Once the execution plan is put into place, then you come up with a contingency plan just in case things don't go as they have been planned. And of course, last but not least, in case things go really south, you come up with an exit plan to minimize the damage. It's the same with store design. In other words, you design the store, then you work backwards to the beginning. I mean, the number 1, I love numbers. Everybody knows I'm a numbers guy. And you have numbers. If you can't measure it, it can happen.
Yeah, it's in every endeavor of life. If you can't measure it, it did not happen.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk about it. You can, you can spew a bunch of platitudes and, kind of gibberish word salads, but show me the numbers, period. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have them, then forget it.
Yeah.
It's meaningless.
Now, the numbers, of course, with me, it's always sales. What were the numbers on when you're dealing in politics? What are the numbers?
Well, the biggest numbers are if you're going to give somebody, or let's say some institution, $1 million, mm-hmm. you're going to ask them, okay, what have you done with the $1 million you got prior from somewhere else? How many people did you employ? How many buildings were erected? How many lives were changed? Mm-hmm. Can you show me 10 instances of where your facility helped 50 kids or 100 kids mm-hmm. or 1,000 kids? Do you follow the kids after they leave the facility? That sort of thing. When you're talking about, let's say, a youth center.
Right.
When you're, let's say, giving the money away to a state for some sort of health program, you're saying, okay, how many people are being treated? What are the outcomes of their treatment? What's the pay for the doctors and the nurses that are working there? Is it commensurate with other doctors in the area? Mm-hmm, so mm-hmm. You're not just saying that you're not getting a brochure in your hand saying, oh, we've done this wonderful work in the community, in the neighborhoods, and it's a thriving place and we're a vibrant organization. That's mm-hmm. a bunch of jive. Mm-hmm. What have you done?
Yeah.
And, passing that test, if you didn't pass it, you didn't get the dough.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the scenario that any congressional office on the Hill or any state legislature or state senator, for example, in California has to deal with.
Interesting. Because, I love that. I love that. And I always like office flow.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me a little about office flow.
Yeah. An office obviously is made up of a bunch of, different type of personalities, but there's got to be order. There's got to be order in an office. Otherwise, if there's not, then things start to slip and you're not doing as good of a job. And, one of the main things about order, and this is hardly mine. I mean, UPS, Fortune 50 company, mm-hmm. they have offices in DC that full of lobbyists. One of the rules for UPS is that at the end of the day, 6 or 7 o'clock, every desk looks completely neat. There's no mm-hmm. papers on it. All the computer screens and everything is in an organized fashion because that's the way UPS feels that an office should be run. And indeed, UPS will send anyone that works for UPS delivering packages at one point. But order in an office means that things are done on time, deadlines are met. The memos that are going to the congressman don't have errors in them. They're short, they're brief. The way people dress, everyone's got a tie on. Mm-hmm. So you just have that sense of, calm at the same time, that sense of discipline. And that's how a good functioning office works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was the biggest thing when I was working with an office. I was on the field most of the time, most of my career. In 2003, I find my wife says, you just need to settle down and you're traveling way too much. I want to see you a little bit more at home. And I said, well, no problem. The kids have already moved out, so I don't have to deal with the teenage years. They're already gone. So I'm good. So I got a buying job called product manager. And I don't know if you're a big movie guy, but I watch movies all the time. There's an old W.C. Fields movie called The Bank Dick, in which case is a bank detective.
Yeah.
And so he runs on his desk is just piled high with just papers and all kinds of stuff. I mean, and so they said, you're fired. So as he's walking out, one of their biggest clients come in and he wants to make a withdrawal, but they don't know where his paperwork is because it's W.C. Fields. So they call him back in and they say, we need to have this information. And he just kind of reaches in like in the middle and he goes, here it is. Because they had guaranteed him, we'll keep you employed as a bank detective if you find us a paper. And he goes, oh, here it is. My boss's desk, my first boss desk was just like that. It was a mess. And I used to say, I know what you think when he looked at my desk, because it was always clean. Always. Everything, even the pencils, everything was where it should be. And I said, I know what you're thinking. Organized people are just too lazy to look for stuff. So, then when I was a manager, I would have also people who had just terrible desks. It's by the end of the week, that's got to be clean. I want to see the desk.
Yeah.
Right?
It's when you walk into an office. I mean, when I walk into offices all the time, and I will see sometimes papers stacked up, papers on chairs, boxes sitting on the floor. And my first thought is, how can I trust you to do what I'm asking you to do if you have an office like this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, your personal discipline, your sloppiness, that's a reflection on you. It's like someone who's ill-dressed.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's this kind of old school boomer type talk.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
If your desk is, or your office is in disarray,
right,
then guess what? My thought is you're in disarray.
Mm-hmm. You're right. You're absolutely right. And what I loved about your book as well is it talked about being organized, talked about knowing where everything is. And what I loved about it is I used to have and I would recommend this to the people that work for me. I wouldn't force it, because if I forced it, then it isn't any good. A productivity journal. Every day you write down 10 things you want to get done. And as you write them, and the hour before you go home, you then look at the list, see what you didn't get done, move them to the next day, and then you analyze each point that you did get done and what you could do to make it better, to get it done quicker.
Right. And, that's because business as well as politics, it's a zero-sum game. You're winning or you're losing. And if you lose too much, you're gone.
Yeah.
You're fired. The electorate is sending you back, is retiring you prematurely. Or in business, guess what?
Yeah.
You're bankrupt and everyone's gone.
And I love your thing about memos as well. Make them short and sweet.
Yeah. No one's going to read 3 pages. I mean, oh gosh.
Yeah.
That's one reason those books are so short. Each one of them is less than 100 pages because no one has time to look through a coffee table style anchor of a book and read.
Exactly. And I enjoyed it because I love the way you broke it up as well, because you've got a stopping point. In other words, and reflect to see what you just read. Because sometimes some chapters that get so doggone long, you forget what was at the beginning of the chapter.
Well, right. Exactly. Too much information is just not going to be absorbed.
Yeah, especially when you're talking to someone who has an analog mind here, in a digital world.
Yeah, in a digital world. Yeah.
Or megabyte in a terabyte world. That's what my mind is. And your meetings. The thing about the meetings was excellent as well. Everything is structured.
Right. And it's hard to enforce that discipline, but you have to make a stand somewhere. I've been in meetings where in a conference room, they start at 10 and I lock the door, and then people are pounding on the outside and I will open the door and say, look, we've already started. You can get the notes from somebody else. And they'll say, well, I had this really important presentation for everybody. I said, you did, but now you don't.
Yeah.
If you can't be at a meeting on time, I can't trust you with anything.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Jeff, I got to tell you, this was the best business book I have ever read.
Again, high praise, Padre, and I appreciate
it. The other one also, too, what you never hear in this business, and I love in your chapter, is accept blame.
Oh, yeah, have to. You become a stronger, better person by, saying, hey, I fouled up and I'm going to make it right. Because then you earn, again, counterintuitively, respect from other people who think, wow, we never hear that.
Yeah.
There's plenty of times I fouled up. I talk about them in the book. I talk about my mistakes and errors and failures in the son's book as well. Again, that's the son's 4 lessons for my 3 sons is not some happy, flowers and rainbows walk through being a parent. When I was on the back of my heels, I admitted to my sons and said, look, Dad's having a rough time, man. So guess what? You have them, I have them.
Yeah.
But accepting blame is key because the respect you earn also is just the personal conscience and character for thinking, hey, I can stand up and say, man, I failed.
Yeah. And it sounded like you accepted the blame, but you also protected your crew. Or the members that you were management. And I think they appreciate that,
Exactly. Pretty much you have to protect a member no matter what. I mean,
I did love the story, though, about a rally just fell apart?
Yeah, that was on a presidential campaign.
Yes. I love that one thing that you said, she didn't get a committee together to get a consensus. She was a consensus.
Right. It's, that's the decisiveness that you don't see in some places, not all. Again, the lesser the stakes, the less decisiveness. But, you have to make a decision, and many times it has to be rapid. This is a fast world, Padre. You know it as well as I do. And there are no times for committees, and the failure to make a decision is a decision. And people don't understand that sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes a bad decision is better than no decision at all.
Oh, you better believe it. Sure. Because then you can rectify it.
That was always my philosophy, is that, you know what? We all make mistakes. What's more important is what we're going to do to fix those mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
That's the important thing, because nobody's perfect.
Well, I've often said, around my kids, failure is better than winning.
Yeah, you learn a lot.
Because with failure, you have to regroup and you have to do it fast. And that gives you that, again, we'll go back to resilience for the next time. Because there's going to be a next time. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I love the way you categorize politicians. Oh man. Yeah.
What was that one? The politicians or individuals are perhaps the most detested person of professional class in society.
They are. And it's unfortunate, but they are. Congress, always comes in the lowest of any institution trusted in the United States. Yeah. And I love Congress. I work for 3 members of Congress. So I love the place. But the fact is, people do not like politicians.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. In the 60s, with our parents, the most detestable profession were used car salesmen. Yeah. I mean, you think about how politicians were thought of. For instance, FDR saved us. Truman ended the war. Eisenhower, who led the Allied forces. Then you had Kennedy, Camelot. And until the baby boomers started coming around, we started saying, well, let's take a closer look at politicians. Johnson, Nixon, and as we got more secular, politics became our new religion. Because,
there's a tremendous focus on politics.
Yeah, because now we have that split. Everybody, no matter what, 50% are not going to like you. End of story. No matter what good you do, 50% is not going to like you. That's the way it is. Book itself was excellent. I will recommend anyone in business to get your book, read it, and enjoy it, because it is fabulous.
Well, thank you again. That's great. I really appreciate it, Padre.
Well, the last book I just want to go over just real quick. I want to get the backstory on Be the Ball. What is the backstory on that?
Be the Ball is a satire of a PhD thesis college called Faber College, which is the college in Animal House. And the reason I wrote the book, Be the Ball, about Caddyshack, was that I, like every other male with a pulse in this country over the age of about 40, feels that Caddyshack is an iconic movie, and mostly because of the comedy, just sheer fun comedy. And the lines that have been in it, the dialogue, certain lines are uttered daily. Unfortunately, in my peer group, and I note my peer group is, ex-military, political types, who are all into the golfing game, but just more so just love the movie. And that was the genesis of it. And in putting it together, it was so fun. In fact, the most fun book I've been associated with, because I got to relive the movie every day for about 3 months. And, my cheeks would be hurting at the end of the day, because I'd just be laughing as I reviewed the movie and wrote the book. And the whole setup for the book was to take Caddyshack seriously, like it was Gone with the Wind or Citizen Kane or Hamlet, some iconic American cinematography. And of course, it's not that. It's just a wacky kind of, a little bit raunchy book about a funny movie. And so that was the thesis, was for Faber College, of course, of Animal House fame. Yeah. And examining like some egghead academic would write about it.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. Before I read your book, I thought I'd watch the movie. So
you lucky man.
So I watched the movie. Well, it's one of my son's favorites. You talk about people over 40. Okay, my boys love this movie. Okay, so I watched the movie. Then I read your book. Then I figured I'd rewatch the movie to see if I saw it in a different light. Jeff, I got to tell you, I did not. It's still a goofy movie. And the only reason why I watch it is because Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh, gosh.
I love it. I mean, let's be honest. That movie had every fallacy about, certain ethnic groups. And I just laughed through the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it maybe couldn't even be made today, given it's so non-PC. But you look at that cast of characters: Chevy Chase, Ted Knight, Bill Murray, obviously the star Rodney.
Yeah,
and you're some of the best comic minds of the last 50 years.
You know what I read on that one is that he thought his jokes weren't funny,
right?
Because nobody laughed.
Right, because they're on a TV set, not a comedy club.
Yeah, and he's going like nobody's laughing, so he didn't think his jokes were funny. They said, "No, we're filming. We can't laugh."
Yeah.
Oh golly, some of those lines in there. Oh, we did a podcast on Rodney Dangerfield because we just love him so much. Me and my last thing, and oh man, some of the stuff he said. And I also read that he Ted Knight and Ramus. Really were upset with the crew and the actors because they partied every night.
Yeah.
And always got there late. Okay.
Yes.
But they were upset for two different reasons. Ted Knight, because he's a professional. And he says, when you start at this time, you start. He's an old time actor. The other one was Ramus because he couldn't go out and partying with him because this was his first director debut.
Yeah.
Once it was all done, I hear he went out and they had to carry him back to his room. It was so bad, but I was very interested in just how you were able to depict each and every character, and you give a real serious note to it. But I'm thinking there's like tongue in cheek in here. I'm thinking,
oh, the whole thing is tongue in cheek. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a fake PhD thesis for a fake college.
I'm going like, oh, this I'm going to tell our audience they need to get that book too if they want a good laugh.
So kind with all three books. I really appreciate
they were wonderful. I tell you what, if I would have had those a lot earlier, I would have probably done a lot better in business and raising my kids.
Oh goodness, I'm blushing here. Come on, Padre.
But I tell you what, I just really, really appreciate you coming on. I want to thank you. I do appreciate the writing. I do appreciate you taking the time because I know you're still a working man to come onto the podcast.
Hey, Padre, it's been a pleasure. And I just, like I said, maybe it's because we were sitting on the bench for so many years in high school, but what a great way to draw me out because it's just, it was just fun.
All right.
Just fun.
Okay. Well, Jeff, thank you so much. And you have a great day. Okay.
You too, sir. Hey,
all right. Bye-bye. We'd like to thank you for listening and remind you that all Jeff's books, 4 Lessons from My 3 Sons, How You Can Raise Resilient Kids, Tales from the Swamp, 5 Habits of Successful Politicians, and Be the Ball, a deep dive into the classic movie Caddyshack, can be purchased on Amazon. And until next time, may God bless.